Ladies and gentlemen, late Friday afternoon, a report came out that was so shocking it has absolutely reverberated all across this country and all around the world. If what is being reported is correct, then this week could be one of the most eventful in the history of the American Republic. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, or maybe you haven't heard yet, according to Fox News, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has reached out to law enforcement officials ahead of an indictment to be handed down against Donald J. Trump, the former President of the United States and a declared candidate to seek the presidency in 2024. As I say, this has sent shockwaves throughout the nation. Everyone has got a take on this, including yours truly. If this goes down, as is being reported, we are about to cross a legal and political Rubicon that I don't know that we will ever be able to go back to the other side of that river. We've got a take on all of this, so strap in and get ready. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to the electronic front porch and let's talk. Now, most people have heard about this story, but in case you haven't, let me break this down for you. As I said, Friday afternoon, Fox News reported that the Manhattan District Attorney's Office had reached out to law enforcement ahead of a possible indictment of Trump. Now, for what, you may ask? Well, here's the interesting part. If you'll think back to about 7 years ago, late in the 2016 campaign, it was reported that Trump, through his attorney, then Michael Cohen, made a payment to porn star Stormy Daniels of about $130,000 to keep hush a supposedly alleged affair that Trump had had with Stormy Daniels. Trump went on, according to reports, to reimburse Cohen through a series of payments. That, in the mind of the Manhattan District Attorney, is enough to bring down an indictment, but we'll get to that momentarily. Now, the report came down from Fox News that the DA's office had reached out to law enforcement, because you have to think about this practically. Even though he's no longer in office, Donald Trump is protected by Secret Service. You just can't walk up, put handcuffs on the man, and perp walk him out of Mar-a-Lago or perp walk him anywhere else around New York City. There's got to be a measure of coordination if this is what you actually intend to do. Bring him in, fingerprint him, arraign him, Mirandize him, everything else. Now, that was the report Friday afternoon. Things really went into high gear come Saturday morning when Donald Trump, on his Truth Social, posted the following, quote, "Now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that, with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale, the far and away leading Republican candidate and former President of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protest, take our nation back." As I say, the fireworks absolutely went straight up with that post. Everywhere it went out, everywhere it was reported, and it has been the talk of the past 48 hours. As of the recording of this video, it's Sunday night. Events may or still to yet unfold for next week, but I wanted to get everybody caught up on what was going on. So that's Trump putting out his take on the whole situation. He's saying, forget indictment, they may very well arrest me come Tuesday morning, or at some point on Tuesday. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Reaction, as you might expect, falls along partisan lines. Take a look from Kevin McCarthy. He tweeted out on Saturday, "Here we go again, an outrageous abuse of power by a radical DA who lets violent criminals walk as he pursues political vengeance against President Trump. I am directing relevant committees to immediately investigate if federal funds are being used to subvert our democracy." A lot of Republicans felt this way. And by the way, and we'll get into this a little bit more later on, this has had the effect of bringing Republicans together. Even people who aren't necessarily fans of Donald Trump are saying, oh, no way, this cannot be allowed to stand. Democrats, for their part, are absolutely giddy with delight. You couldn't make them any happier. The only thing that would make them happier is, like I said, to see Donald Trump in handcuffs and perp walked right in to New York court. To give you some of the reactions from congressional Democrats, take a look at this. From dear old Eric Bang Bang with Fang Fang Swalwell, he tweeted out, "It was Donald Trump who broadcasted to the world the FBI raided his home to retrieve top secret documents. And it's Donald Trump who broadcasted to the world that he'll soon be arrested. His goal is acts of violence in his name. We must be prepared to protect against it." Now, if you're wondering what old Bang Bang with Fang Fang is referring to, he's talking about one word in Donald Trump's Truth Social post, and I'll go back to it. Notice the word protest. The Democrats are already trying to make it out that Trump is trying to incite violence on his behalf if this indictment and or arrest comes down. His old boss, Nancy Pelosi, whatever the grand jury decides, its consideration makes clear. No one is above the law, not even a former president of the United States. Funny, but I wonder if she took that tack with Bill Clinton. But I digress. The former president's announcement this morning is reckless, doing so to keep himself in the news and to foment unrest among his supporters. So as you can see, the reaction has been fast, furious, hot, and heavy. But strangely enough, there is one person that has not said a peep about any of this. I take you to the Twitter page of the legendary Mike Cernovich. Take a look at this. This was from Saturday. Cernovich says, and I quote, "DeSantis is making his first unforced error by not denouncing this lawless act. He should say he will only extradite if there's proper legal review. This is one of those pivotal moments in your life. If he gets this wrong, he's better off not even declaring." Now, if you're wondering what he's referring to, it's sort of the biggest unkept secret in Washington, D.C. Ron DeSantis is about to declare a run for the White House. Now, we'll get back to more about this position that Cernovich is taking on DeSantis and DeSantis' silence a little later on. But he is conspicuously quiet. Ron DeSantis, that is. He hasn't said boo one word about this. Republicans of all stripes are rallying to Trump. Even if they don't necessarily agree with Trump, they don't agree with what's about to be done if the Manhattan DA's office goes forward with this. But yet, a fellow presidential candidate hasn't said one word. Very strange, don't you think? But let's get into a discussion. What exactly is Trump being charged with? Hang on, we'll talk about that in 1 second. Now, those of you out there who are watching all this have to be asking a question. Front Porch, what exactly is Trump being charged with? I mean, they've thrown everything but the kitchen sink at him. What's left? Well, there's two ways to answer that question. One is they're throwing the kitchen sink at him again in a slightly different version, or the way I like to look at it, they're throwing a legal charge at him that, to borrow an expression from back home, is being held together by spit and baling wire. Basically, what they're holding him up with is a very convoluted concoction of a state charge that they're hoping threads the eye of a needle and gets to a federal charge. Now, I'm not doing this justice at all, but I'm going to refer you right now to the legendary Jonathan Turley. He had an article out in The Hill on Saturday morning, and this breaks down everything beautifully. Headline: Get ready for Manhattan DA's made-for-TV Trump prosecution. High on ratings, but short on the law. Now, in case you're wondering, Jonathan Turley is no friend of Donald Trump. Okay? Turley over the years has been known as a political lefty, but when it comes to matters of the law, he is straight down the middle. He'll call it exactly like he sees it. Whether it favors Democrats, whether it favors Republicans, it doesn't matter. The law is paramount, or to use the Latin phrase, lex rex. The law is king. So we're going to take a look at this article, and he's got some very interesting statements to make. Now, as I said, all of this revolves around the payment that Trump, through his attorney, Michael Cohen, made to Stormy Daniels in the waning stages of the 2016 campaign. We'll go right directly to Turley's article, and I'll read you just a few snippets of it. Trump faces serious legal threats in the ongoing Mar-a-Lago investigation, but the New York case would be easily dismissed outside of a jurisdiction like New York, where Alvin Bragg can count on highly motivated judges and jurors. Bragg is the Manhattan District Attorney. Although it may be politically popular, the case is legally pathetic. Bragg is struggling to twist state law to effectively prosecute a federal case long ago rejected by the Justice Department. Now, let me stop right here for a second and make a very important point. This could have been done years ago by the Justice Department. Even though Republicans were running it, supposedly, the Justice Department, again, no friend of Donald Trump, could have brought a case against him and said, hey, this is a violation of federal election law. The Justice Department wouldn't even try to do what Alvin Bragg is about to attempt. But we'll go back to the article. Against Trump over his payment of, quote, hush money to former stripper Stormy Daniels. In 2018, yes, this is how long this theory has been around, I wrote how difficult such a federal case would be under existing election law. Now, 6 years later, the same theory may be shoehorned into a state claim. Prosecutors and this goes a little further down into the article, prosecutors working under Bragg's predecessor, Cyrus Vance Jr., also reportedly rejected the viability of using New York law to effectively charge a federal offense. Basically, what he's trying to do is make an argument about how this is a violation of state law, which leads to a violation of federal law. But we'll get into that here in just a second. While we still do not know the specific state charges in the anticipated indictment, the most discussed would fall under Section 175 for falsifying business records. Now keep that in mind. Based on the claim that Trump used legal expenses to conceal the alleged hush money payments that were used to violate federal election law. While some legal experts have insisted such concealment is clearly a criminal matter that may be charged, they were conspicuously silent when Hillary Clinton faced a not dissimilar campaign finance allegation. Okay? Now, he goes on, Turley, to make this point. A Section 175 charge would normally be a misdemeanor. The only way to convert it to a Class E felony, under state law, requires showing that, quote, intent to defraud includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal the commission thereof. In other words, I did this to help me do that. One leads logically to the other. In other words, I'm threading the eye of the needle here. The violation of state law means that I am intending to violate federal election law. Now, here's an important point in that article. The linkage to a federal offense is critical for another reason. Bragg's office ran out of time. Now listen to this again. Bragg's office ran out of time to prosecute this as a misdemeanor years ago. The statute of limitation is 2 years. Even if he shows this is a viable felony charge, the longer 5-year limitation could be hard to establish. Now, there's one other point that I'll make here that is very, very relevant. Let me see if I can find this real fast. And this may be what I consider to be the legal kill shot as far as Alvin Bragg's efforts in this matter. And this is a paragraph from Turley's article. Quote, it is extremely difficult to show that paying money to cover up an embarrassing alleged affair, I'm adding the word alleged, Turley does not, alleged affair was done for election purposes as opposed to an array of obvious other reasons, from protecting a celebrity's reputation to preserving a marriage. That was demonstrated by the failed federal prosecution of former presidential candidate John Edwards on a much stronger charge of using campaign funds to cover up the affair. Now, if you didn't catch what Turley was saying, it's real simple. In order for you to show that this theory works, in other words, he violates state law to violate federal election law, you have to know the intent of the action. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, this is why he did it. The problem with that is there are reasonable reasons why someone would make this payment. Okay, for example, it's an embarrassing situation. You really don't want this to come out. Or you could very well just be trying to preserve your marriage. Okay, lay aside the politics and the legality of it, maybe not the best reasons in the world to do it, but you'd understand the why. And that's just it. Bragg, in order to make this work, has got to know the intent in Donald Trump's brain the moment he commissioned Michael Cohen to do this. And there's no way in the world he's ever going to be able to prove that in court. Plus, as we read earlier, the statute of limitations is up on this thing. It was up 2 years after the commission of the act under New York state law. How are you going to reestablish that with an additional 5 years past the statute of limitations? You begin to see why this thing is held together by spit and baling wire from a legal perspective. But if you really want somebody else's take on it, catch this. The legendary civil libertarian Alan Dershowitz has weighed in on this. He wrote an article in the New York Sun. Now, not a paper you normally think of in New York City, but it's been there for years. And he wrote an article, and I'm going to read you just a little bit of it. When I was coming of age in the 1950s, Southern prosecutors would target civil rights workers and search for any possible violation of law, no matter how technical. If they discovered or invented a violation, they would indict, prosecute, convict, and sentence the target. Often the violation would be of an obscure statute, sound familiar, that would never have been before deployed. To paraphrase the late Justice Robert Jackson, these anachronistic statutes and precedents lie around, quote, like loaded weapons, end of quote, ready to be selectively enforced against political enemies. That's precisely what we are now seeing with the Manhattan District Attorney, Alvin Bragg, targeting the former president and current candidate, Donald Trump. Does anyone actually believe that if someone were accused of paying hush money to avoid a sex scandal in the manner that Mr. Trump is suspected of doing, would he be prosecuted? After spending months searching the criminal code for a law that Mr. Trump might be accused of violating, Mr. Bragg has apparently landed on a highly questionable campaign contribution provision that has never been used in a comparable situation. Now, I'm no lawyer, but I know who I listen to in matters like this. People who are older and smarter than I am, and when it comes to matters of the law, Turley and Dershowitz are two folks that I turn to. Now, you can have your opinions on this. They can have their opinions. In the end, we're going to find out what happens if this goes into a court of law. But this, what Bragg is trying to do here, makes no legal sense. But that sort of begs the question, why? And even beyond that, why now? Well, the answer's kind of obvious. They don't, and they being the establishment, be it Democrats or Republicans, don't want Donald Trump to run, and they're scared to death he might very well win in 2024. Also, given how bad everything's going in the country right now, a little distraction might not hurt the powers that be, but that might be a slightly conspiratorial take on my part. You decide. So where does this go from here? Hard to say. The next 48 to 72 hours could be absolutely extraordinary, for good or for bad. But there are some updates since things broke on Friday and Saturday. Take a look at this. From the same New York Sun that we got Alan Dershowitz's article, headline, and this came out about 5:40 this afternoon on Sunday. New witness to testify in Trump grand jury investigation. The under headline, the possibility of new testimony in the Trump case suggests that the grand jury is not yet finished with its work and an arrest is not imminent. In the first paragraph thereof, a lawyer who previously advised Michael Cohen, the key government witness in the hush money payments investigation into Donald Trump, has been invited to appear Monday before a Manhattan grand jury that is considering potential charges against the former president, according to a person familiar with the matter. Robert Costello had advised Cohen before the two had a falling out and is prepared to offer testimony to the grand jury attacking the credibility of Cohen's statements, according to the person who insisted on anonymity to discuss the secret legal proceedings. Now, Trump had said that the arrest might come down on Tuesday. If it's the case that there are still people who are being questioned by the grand jury, It's possible that the indictment may not happen on Tuesday, but something for sure is going to happen this week. I'll be very surprised if it doesn't. Okay? Now, I'm not a soothsayer, so, take everything I say, along with every other social media content creator, take everything we say with a grain of salt. I think it's going to happen this week, but it's altogether possible that maybe there are more witnesses. Maybe this thing doesn't come down in the next 48 to 72 hours, as predicted by some. But we know that there are still things moving around inside the grand jury. Now, another point, and I forgot to bring it up a moment ago, but I will go back to it. There are reports that there is a bit of dissension inside the DA's office in Manhattan. Let me show you a tweet from John Cardello, himself former law enforcement in New York City, and he's also at one time a radio talk show host. He tweeted out on Saturday around 11 a.m. in the morning, New York law enforcement sources tell me the Manhattan DA's office is, quote, in chaos. They're telling me about 60% of the office wants no part of this and wishes Bragg and Reese is the deputy DA, would just stop this nonsense. They all know there is no crime, apparently all being driven by a small group of radicals at the top, very similar to Russiagate. Now, one more comment about Reese, and I'm going to find this tweet real fast. Give me 1 second here. Ah, yes, here it is. From New York law enforcement sources, Alvin Bragg isn't smart enough to orchestrate the Trump prosecution. He's an incompetent figurehead. He's not the one to watch. His deputy, Meg Reese, is behind this. She's a close Soros operative and a committed radical with significant global connections. Reese has probably had more impact on radical weaponized prosecutors around the country than any other single individual. Wow, that's powerful. So where does this go from here? Like I said, legally, still in the works. Politically, there's a lot shaken down with this. Now, you might ask me the question, Front Porch, what does this do to Trump? What does this do to his, running for president? Well, as I understand it, and I could be wrong, but as I understand it, even if he were indicted, it doesn't necessarily prevent him from running. Now, what does it do for him politically? I'm going to offer up a take that's going to sound counterintuitive. If he were to be indicted, if this goes down as some people are predicting, he's indicted, he's perp-walked into the New York courthouse, he's fingerprinted, he's Mirandized, he's arraigned, all that stuff, this is going to redound to his political benefit. Much like the Mar-a-Lago raid in August of 2022, this is going to galvanize Republicans around the country to his candidacy. There has always been a loyal base of support inside the Republican Party for Donald Trump. Now, even though there are people that get upset with tactics and phrases and manners of speaking and tweeting, they are not disloyal to the policies that Trump wants to advocate and wants to see implemented. There have been some who maybe have gone off the reservation in the past couple of years because they think, oh, Trump's too old, Trump's yesterday's news, what have you. But this single event is going to bring those people back to the fold. They're going to realize, much like independents and some Democrats, who maybe aren't always politically up on everything, they're going to look at this and say, the only reason this is being done is to take out Donald Trump. So this redounds to Trump's benefit. It's going to make the argument that Trump's been making, but honestly, this will make it even better than Trump could make it for himself. And the argument is, they're scared to death of me, they know I'll beat Biden, and they're trying to take me out politically right now. So what does this do for Ron DeSantis? Well, that sort of depends upon the gov. The longer he stays silent, the worse this is getting for him. People are looking at him and saying, why aren't you defending Trump? Why aren't you defending a fellow candidate? Even though he's the competition, this could just as easily happen to you as it could happen to Trump. And others are saying the very same thing. Now, there are those, perhaps cynically, that are looking at this saying, hey, maybe Ron DeSantis is hoping that, Trump gets indicted. That's the opinion of Richard Barris, the People's Pundit, one of the best pollsters in America. If you're not following him, do so. But he tweeted that idea out himself. Maybe that's what DeSantis is hoping for. Trump gets indicted. It hurts him politically. It redounds to DeSantis' benefit. If that's what DeSantis is thinking, he doesn't have quite the political instincts I would have given him credit for. This is only going to help Trump. And if DeSantis does not get out in front of this thing, state his position, and state support for his fellow candidate, and the fact that this is a bogus prosecution, if there were any Trump voters that were really looking seriously at DeSantis, they're going to come off of him faster than Usain Bolt coming out of the starters block at the Olympics. They're going to come off DeSantis really quick. So, if DeSantis is looking for free advice, I'll give it to him. Dude, you need to get a full-throated defense of Donald Trump out there, and you need to do it right now. But I can give advice all the time. Whether people take it or not is entirely up to them. So anyway, as we start to wrap this up, I ask for my favors of you as I always do. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. We are a small little concern. As I've said before, we want to be a big concern, but we need your subscription to do that. Number two, if you have friends of yours that you think would enjoy this content and my commentary, please feel free to share the video around. And number three, as always, hit the like button. You'd be amazed what that does to help a small little content creator who's trying to get started. My name is Brian Trippett. I'm your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.